We need to talk about this right now. We've got Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith calling out Rich Paul for some of the claims he's been making lately. Rich Paul has been coming after Michael Jordan's legacy again, essentially building a case for LeBron as the greatest of all time. Now, look, nobody questions where his loyalty stands. His connection to LeBron is no secret. But the problem is, some of these arguments he's putting forward are underhanded shots at Jordan rather than genuine cases for LeBron. And here's the thing, he doesn't need to do that. LeBron's body of work is strong enough to stand on its own merit. People always ask why the GOAT debate never dies down. Why can't we just appreciate each player within their own era? Well, this is exactly why. When someone with Rich Paul's platform goes on a podcast and starts making these kinds of statements, it gives the conversation legs far beyond the usual back and forth you see on social media every day. It stops being internet noise and becomes a headline. So let's get into what Rich Paul actually said. He drew a comparison between LeBron James and Muhammad Ali, and while that sounds like a compliment on the surface, the context behind it was clearly aimed at taking a shot at Jordan, framing him as someone who prioritized business over principle. Rich Paul also went on to suggest that Scottie Pippen was more valuable to those championship teams than Michael Jordan himself, a claim that raised eyebrows across the basketball world. And this wasn't the first time. Earlier, Rich Paul made the argument that Jordan's shoes didn't sell on their own initially, suggesting the Air Jordan brand took off not because of Martin's dominance on the court, but because Martin Lawrence was seen wearing them on his sitcom. Will Smith had them on in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and drug dealers in the neighborhood were rocking them, which made everyone else want a pair. Now, here's where that argument falls apart. He conveniently left out a critical piece of the puzzle. The reason those same guys in the neighborhood wanted the shoes in the first place was because they wanted to hoop like Mike. Jordan's on-court greatness is what created the cultural demand. The TV appearances and street credibility followed the legend.
It's not, right? Scottie Pippen rings, those 6, they're not the same as Michael Jordan's.
Right.
They're not the same as LeBron James.
But they're pretty good.
But they're good. They're good. If there's some sidekick rings, if there's some sidekick rings,
I think Scotty's rings are just the same as Michael Jordan's. Why not?
Because he won the best player on the team.
Yeah, but he was the most impactful player on the team.
I get it.
What do you mean he wasn't?
Listen, I get it.
If you unplug Scottie Pippen off that team,
Sure.
Jordan's 0 for 6.
Sure.
Starters is the starters. When LeBron lost the first championship in Miami, it wasn't the starters, it's the bench. I can't come off the bench. I got old off the bench, right? I got these young legs, and then I got to bring in a bunch of 50-year-olds, right?
Well, you let the people tell it. You know, he's criticized for that. You couldn't beat. You had J.J. Barea guarding you. When, if you really watched the film, you had like 5 people guarding you, and J.J. Barea was like the doorknob on the steel door.
That was everyone knows they were figuring it out. LeBron was being overly respectful to D Wade, and they needed a season to figure it out.
And you played against the Wizards. You remember the trade? Those are the Wizard players who played LeBron how many times?
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
That's true.
So
they had experience against.
Yeah, so you got Deshaun, Karan, and Brendan Haywood over there.
Yeah.
So now everything we was lacking there,
they had.
Come on, man. So now the story is that the Washington Wizards players are the reason LeBron lost the 2011 finals, because he had already faced them and beaten them multiple times in the playoffs before? That doesn't even make sense. Look, the Dallas Mavericks put together a legitimate roster that year. They were a well-coached, experienced team, and they executed their game plan at a high level. But let's not sit here and pretend that external factors or previous matchups explain what happened in that series. That's not an honest conversation. Here's the part that's really hard to defend. J.J. Barea, a backup point guard standing around 6 feet tall, was giving LeBron James real problems in that series. And LeBron, one of the most physically gifted players the game has ever seen, looked hesitant. He looked uncomfortable. At that size and skill level, LeBron should have been catching the ball and shooting right over Barea every single time down the floor. There's no scheme or roster construction that explains away that level of passivity from a player of LeBron's caliber. He looked tentative throughout that entire series. That's not an opinion. That's what people watched with their own eyes. So don't come back now and try to rewrite what happened. Don't try to reshape the narrative around a performance that left the entire basketball world confused at the time.
Oh, I mean, we were just having a conversation, and I was just like, look, I think this is probably the best situation. It may not happen overnight, but if you win one time in Cleveland, there's nothing else to be done. Because he already had rings. So it wasn't about, he already had rings. Whether you have 2, 4, 6, 18, whatever, you're a champion. No one can say you're not a champion. But the idea of going back home, winning one, I felt that I always looked at LeBron to be more of what I would say was the people's champ in terms of, like Muhammad Ali was. Yeah, even when he lost, I felt like people really embraced him.
Does it bother you that so many people are happy to see you fail?
Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, all the people that was rooting on me to fail, at the end of the day, they got to wake up tomorrow and have the same life that they had before they woke up today. They got the same personal problems that they had today. And I'm going to continue to live the way I want to live and continue to do the things that I want to do with me and my family and be happy with that. So, they can get a few days or a few months or whatever the case may be on being happy about not only myself, but the Miami Heat not accomplishing their goal, but, they got to get back to the real world at some point.
Now, I understand the point being made about LeBron going back to Cleveland and delivering that championship. That part of the argument is clear. But this idea that LeBron was always viewed as the people's champion, that's not an accurate picture of how things actually played out. The moment LeBron announced he was leaving Cleveland for Miami, public perception shifted dramatically. Yes, he still had his core fan base, people who rode with him no matter what. But the decision in 2010 was the first time a significant portion of the general public genuinely turned on LeBron James. That was the moment the goodwill cracked. So framing him as this universally beloved figure throughout his entire career doesn't line up with what actually happened. And when it comes to LeBron speaking out on social issues, yes, he has used his platform on certain occasions. People will acknowledge that. But they'll also point to the moments where he pulled back, the situation involving China and the NBA, the moment when Kyrie Irving shared that controversial film and LeBron's initial response was notably cautious rather than direct. People remember those moments too, and they raise a fair question about whether LeBron applies a filter when the stakes feel personally costly. And that's exactly why comparing him to Muhammad Ali doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Ali didn't have a filter. Ali sacrificed his heavyweight title, his prime earning years, and his freedom for what he believed in at a time when the consequences of speaking out were incomparably more severe. You have to evaluate people within the context of their era. That's a fair standard to apply to anyone. And part of the reason athletes today even have the freedom to speak as openly as they do is because of what people like Ali went through before them. That context matters, and it can't be glossed over just to make a comparison.
Wade from the Miami Heat, LeBron doesn't win titles there. If you unplug Kyrie Irving from the Cavaliers, they don't come back from 3-1. If you unplug Anthony Davis from the Bubba Lakers, they don't win a championship.
You can leave them up there, you can put the ISO camera on me. It will never happen as long as I'm breathing and I'm doing First Take. You can scratch that dream, my brother. It's never, ever, ever going to happen. I see it from a mile away. You understand? Remember what I said, Shay, Janae, Big Perk. If you lower Michael Jordan an inch in anybody's mind, you simultaneously must elevate LeBron. Rich Paul will deny it till the cows come home. He's got his podcast and plenty of airspace to do just that. But ultimately, they're going to come back to First Take, and they're going to see a brother named Stephen A. Smith on national television who doesn't take many days off, looking you right in the camera in front of a national and international audience and letting you know there is no way in hell that will ever happen as long as I'm breathing and I'm on this show. You can try it every way. Latest salvo, nice try, Rich.
But come on. But let me go on to Rich Paul for a second. Let me dive into this. This is where he got to stop, though. And this is where he starts to hurt LeBron James' GOAT case. You see what I'm saying? Like, and this is where people start saying the controlling of the narrative. Like, bro, you speaking on MJ and you saying these things, and it's like, oh man, here go Rich Paul. Rich Paul got Bron got to hype up the GOAT status
because he's attached to him. And again, what I was saying, everybody got their picks and
chooses. It's actually making it worse.
One thing I can say in Bron defense, Bron don't never speak on nothing. We all know who Bron aspired to be better than and wanted to be was Jordan. He was 23 in respect.
Let me say this clearly. Every podcast coming out of Clutch Sports seems to follow the same pattern. It feels less like a genuine conversation and more like a calculated effort to reshape the narrative around LeBron's career. And the question that keeps coming up is, why? Why does it have to be that? LeBron James had one of the greatest careers in the history of professional basketball. That is not debatable. So why can't it just be allowed to stand as exactly that? You are never going to convince every single person on the planet that LeBron is better than Michael Jordan. And you know what? You're also never going to convince everyone that Jordan is better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's just the nature of this conversation. People have their picks, they have their reasons, and they feel strongly about them. That's always been part of basketball culture. But here's what matters. There are only a select few players in the history of this game who even belong in that conversation. And if your name is in that discussion, that alone is a remarkable achievement. It means you did everything you were supposed to do during your career. It means certain people will always choose you. That should be enough. The problem starts when you go beyond celebrating a great career and instead start pushing a specific narrative. And then, when people respond based on what they actually watched with their own eyes, you turn around and tell them they didn't understand what they saw. Rich Paul sat there and said, if you actually watch the film, as if the people watching felt confused by what was happening right in front of them. That's a dismissive way to engage with an audience, including the people who are actually on your side. And let's address the basketball knowledge argument directly. Rich Paul has not played in the NBA. Most fans haven't either. So on that level, the playing field is a lot more even than he's implying. Just because you're in close proximity to LeBron James and have conversations with NBA players doesn't automatically mean your basketball insight is significantly deeper than that of a knowledgeable, lifelong fan of the game. That's not a fair card to play. And here's the thing that really says it all. Even Kendrick Perkins, who openly believes LeBron James is the greatest of all time, couldn't get behind this approach. When someone who is firmly in your corner can't support the argument because it's too agenda-driven, that tells you everything you need to know. Just let it be what it is. LeBron's legacy is extraordinary. Let it breathe. Let it speak for itself. You don't need to tear anything else down to build it up.